Welcome back to the shop, my friends. Steve here at SKS Props, and in today's build video, I'll be creating a prop from one of my all-time favorite video games, Bioshock. In fact, I'll be crafting a Bioshock Splicer mask. Now, this mask is made all out of my HD foam, which you can find over at Blick Art Materials, and if you would like to craft your own, I do have free PDF files available over on my website that you can download and build right along with the video. So, I want to show you what it takes to put this creepy mask together. Let's go ahead and get started. I made a quick prototype to get my basic shapes before moving on to create the final template. And to start this build, we're going to take part A and trace and cut that out of some 10mm foam. This piece is going to make up the four-headed nose of the rabbit mask. Now, because this seam has quite a bit of pull on it, I'm going to be using some weldwood contact cement. And remember, when using this adhesive, always work in a well-ventilated area and wear your respirator. Next up is going to be the eye sockets, and the top of the eye is going to be made out of part B. The big thing to notice with this piece is that while all the other cuts are straight, the cut at the top is set back at a 20-degree angle. Once this is glued into place using some Bob Smith super glue, this angled cut helps it recess back into the mask. And if your seams aren't perfect, it's okay. I'm going to clean these up with a rotary tool later on. Part C is going to make up the lower section for the eye. This is also going to be traced and cut out of some 6mm foam. And just like part B, the cuts at the top are angled to give it a unique shape. Now with these angles, they don't have to be perfect. You can always do a rough cut and then clean it up with your rotary tool. Part D will make up the cheek section of the mask on either side. Now while all the other cuts are straight, around the eye socket will also be cut back at an angle. The other thing to note is I'm going to be putting in a V-groove on the back side of these pieces. This will let the lower part of the mask conform to the shape without adding an additional seam. So I score the foam with a hobby knife, and then sand away a V-groove using my rotary tool. After this is filled with some hot glue, it's going to have a nice, subtle curve. I also took this time to clean up some of my seams and round over a little bit of the nose. Part D can now be glued to the bottom of part C. When attaching this piece, I would recommend to start in the front and line up all the way around part C. Then you can flip the mask over and glue the rest of the foam together. I also marked the middle of the nose for a later step. With the two part D pieces attached to either side, I can mark placement for the nose and add some super glue. The two part D pieces are going to meet in the middle of the nose on either side. And you can see by doing that, it curves the nose so the mask is not completely flat. Now I can attach part E, which is going to make up the top left and right sides of the mask. This will also be traced and cut out of some 10mm foam, with attachment angles on the bottom and inside. And what all these angles are doing for each one of these individual pieces is helping the overall mask to conform to compound curves. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get flat pieces of foam to maintain all of these shapes. With most of the mask sections attached, I'm now going to take a smooth sanding drum on my rotary tool and alleviate most of these seams. Next up, I can go ahead and attach the ears, which are going to be made out of part F. The ears will also be traced and cut out of some 10mm foam. Like many of the other pieces, a slight 10-degree angle back is going to be cut into the bottom. This is going to help the ears face more forward rather than having the ears point to the back. Super glue can be applied to the bottom, and then the ears can be attached to either side of the mask. Using some Surebond or hot glue, I can now start to round over the bottom of the mask. The V-groove is filled with the glue, and then the mask can be held until it is cooled. Like I said earlier, this gives it a nice subtle curve without adding an additional seam. I'm also going to round over the top sides of the mask so it better conforms to my face. I'm going to do this by cutting some small strips of 2mm foam. These can then be super glued to either back side while the foam is curved. On this same principle, I fill the upper section of the V cut with a little more hot glue. I'm also going to hold the foam to get the curve, but not quite as dramatic as the bottom. For the swirly details on the mask, I'm going to utilize my laser cutter. It's not something I show on the channel very often, but I wanted these pieces to be identical on either side. So I created some SVG files in Illustrator and exported those to my Glowforge. These were then cut out of some 2mm HD foam. Now of course you do not have to have a laser cutter to do this. I included the shapes on the template and you can still cut these out by hand using a hobby knife. I just have to work really fast to get through these builds as quick as possible. And if I can utilize some technology from time to time, that definitely helps. But just like 3D printers, these tools are extensions that artists can utilize. And I've been doing art for so long that I've had to get with the times time and time again. The other thing to think about is even if you don't have a laser cutter, there are a ton of different maker spaces available now where you can take your own files and materials and utilize the tools that they have. When I started my crafting journey, 3D printers and laser cutters definitely were not on the scene. So we built everything by hand, just like the old masters that used to work on the Hollywood movies before CGI. That doesn't mean that you have to use them. You could be a purist, but they're there if you want to. With my face details in place, it's now time to outline the mask. I'm going to start at the top of the mask using this part that goes right in the middle. From there, I'm going to cut several strips of 2mm foam approximately 24 inches in length. These strips are going to outline each one of the ears and wrap around the mask. I would recommend to start at the bottom of the ear, work your way to the top, and then you can mark and cut the correct angle. Then utilizing one of the other strips, you can cut the opposite angle and work your way back down the ear. 24 inches should give you enough material to wrap around the outside of the ear, the outside of the mask, and meet up at the nose. But of course you could add as many seams as necessary to wrap around the mask. It doesn't necessarily have to be seamless. But with all my detailed bits into place, this mask is really starting to come together. Next up, I'm going to sand down the nose to give it a lower profile. I also carve out some room on the back side of part D to make way for my nose. With a good chunk of the foam sanded down, I can now work on the nose template. This piece is also going to be traced and cut out of some 2mm foam. This piece will be glued to the bottom where the two halves meet, and then carefully rolled up the nose to make sure that it's even. I want these outlines to look a little more seamless in the final version, so I'm going to use some gap filler. With the fabrication of the mask complete, I can now add a little bit of battle damage. This is achieved using the side of a stone bit attached to my rotary tool. And of course you can add as much or as little as you would want. You could even lop off one of the ears completely and destroy half of the mask so your face is exposed. To prep my mask for paint, I'm going to be spraying on some Plastidip and Krylon Camo Khaki. From there I'll start the hand painting process using some Liquitex heavy body parchment. This is going to be applied with a 1-inch mop brush and a dry brushing method. I'm not adding any water to this because I want there to be a little bit of darkness around each one of the facial details, as well as the outline of the mask. And it's always better to add less paint in the beginning because you could build it up in a few steps. I do touch up a couple of the seams with a detail brush just to make them blend in a little bit better. For this porcelain style look that I'm going to be going for, I'm going to be doing a wash using some Liquitex Mars Black. This is mixed into the parchment. This mixture will be applied over the entire surface using quite a bit of water. Then I'll go in with a damp paper towel and blot a lot of the open areas. For the metallic trims on the mask, I'm going to be using some Golden brand iridescent bronze. Now this paint is very opaque, so I'm being extra careful to only place it on the raised details, and to make sure that none of it gets onto the white surface. If you do accidentally get it onto the white, scrub it with a wet brush as soon as possible. You may be able to displace the metallic flicks enough that you won't have to repaint the white section. This paint is also going to be applied to all of the trim around the outside of the mask. And because the 2mm foam is somewhat thick, I do have to go back with an extremely small detail brush and paint the sides. With the mask painted, it's starting to look pretty darn good, but I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to water down some perma blood with a chip brush. Then I'm going to use the side of my hand to flick the paint directly onto the mask. After the wet paint had been applied to the mask, I'll then slam it down onto the hard surface. This will make it look as though the cast off came out quickly and then dripped down the face of the mask. To make this mask wearable, I'm going to be attaching some elastic cord. These strips are cut to approximately 12 inches, so I have plenty of material left over. To attach the elastic to the mask, I'm sandwiching them between some small strips of 2mm foam. These will make sure the elastic doesn't pull away, and my mask is now ready to wear. So y'all can see what it takes to put together a Bioshock Splicer mask. And if you are building any of my builds or utilizing some HD foam, be sure to tag me at SKSProps on Twitter and Instagram because I love seeing your creations. Until next time, build your best with the best. HD foam.